Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Divorce Differently podcast. This is another episode in the special podcast series of Divorce Talks with Irwin Mitchell. Today, we're looking at a part of the family court process that many parents worry about, CAFCASS. That's the service that safeguards children's welfare during children-related proceedings. Now, I often hear from my clients concerned about involving CAFCASS. They're worried that their family is going to be scrutinized or that their children are going to be asked to take sides or somehow involved in all of this. So in this episode, we're going to break this down. We're going to look at what CAFCASS actually is there to do, the value that they bring, and what their involvement looks like in real life on the ground. To talk about this, I've invited Jennifer Pollock. Jennifer is a family law solicitor at Irwin Mitchell and the partner in charge of their children team of excellence. Bringing over 16 years of experience in family law, she has expertise in all aspects of relationship breakdown, including divorce, of course, cohabitation disputes, children matters, and domestic abuse injunctions. Jennifer has a strong interest and extensive experience in handling complex Children Act cases, particularly those involving international elements, parental alienation, and serious allegations. Jennifer, it's great to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Chloe.
So this is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people because it is a third party getting involved in their family and potentially speaking to the children. So maybe you could explain to us when and how CAFCASS gets involved in a case.
Yeah, of course. So CAFCASS are only ever going to be involved in a case after an application is made to court.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's not if you're able to resolve matters in relation to your children between parents. It's only after a parent or a party has made an application to the family court.
Yeah.
And when an application is made to the court, it gets sent to various different people. One of the organisations it's sent to immediately upon issue is CAFCASS.
Yeah.
And CAFCASS will have a look at the application. And in the background, before there's even been a hearing, they'll be starting to do some initial work on the case. And initially, at that stage in the proceedings, they're just involved in preparing, doing some initial background safeguarding checks and
Mhm.
preparing a letter to the court. Um,
Okay.
and, and we call it a safeguarding letter. And what they've done in the background is they've contacted the police for some very, very high level initial checks. They've
Yeah.
contacted children's services again for some really high level checks just to see if children's services know the children, whether there's been any involvement. And they'll have initial telephone conversations with both of the parents. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and those
So,
calls are really brief at this stage, Chloe. They're just sort of a 20 minutes. I think they have, some clients have said that we've been on the phone for an hour, but actually
oh
it's
wow.
more,
Yeah.
yeah, it's more likely a sort of 20, 30 minute initial call just to understand what's the application about, what issues do the court need to be aware of, are there any safeguarding issues, and what's their kind of view about how things should progress. Um,
Yeah.
and then that's all incorporated into a letter. It's normally about 3 pages long, and that gets sent to the court and it gets sent to both of the parents normally before the first court hearing.
Okay. So in most cases, that's kind of the end of their involvement in the case. But one of the things people worry about is the children being involved and Kafka speaking to the children. So does that happen? It doesn't sound like it happens systematically. In what context would it happen and at what stage?
Exactly, Chloe. So that happens in every case, but actually, in a lot of cases, CAFCASS will say no further involvement for CAFCASS, and then the court will just proceed to make decisions in relation to the children without CAFCASS becoming involved. But
Mhm.
if there are safeguarding issues, or in cases where there are some more complex issues,
Yeah.
the court will sometimes direct CAFCASS to prepare what we call a Section 7 report. And that's when they conduct a kind of a more in detail investigation in relation to the
Okay.
issues that are happening for that family. And they'll talk to the parents. And as part of that procedure, they will also spend some time talking to the children. Obviously, the work they do with the children depends a little bit on the children's age, and their
Yeah.
understanding of what's happening. And you've got to remember that I was really, really reassure clients at CAFCASS. They're really experienced. A lot of them are
Yeah.
former social workers. They're used to working with children. So And they won't go in to a child and ask them, which parent do you want to live with? Or,
Yeah.
what's your view on this adult issue? It's done in a really kind of child focused, sensitive way. So that's the stage that they would get involved and
Okay.
first speak to the children. But it's done as the proceedings progress and in a way that is appropriate to the case
Yeah.
and the children's ages and their kind of understanding of what the issues are.
So only really if they deem it necessary. Do you have an idea vaguely? I mean, are we talking about 10% of cases, 50% of cases? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it depends. I mean, I do a lot of the complex cases, Chloe, so
That's
I
true. So
think
it's a higher percentage for you.
exactly. So the cases that I'm involved in, I'd say actually most of the cases do involve some kind of CAFCASS or expert welfare report. But I think overall, the majority of cases go through the court system without any kind of CAFCASS involvement.
Okay.
I think that the Pathfinder project is slightly different, and I think we can talk about that later.
Yes, I'd like
Um,
to.
yeah, but as it stands at the moment, unless there are safeguarding issues or unless there are kind of really kind of serious issues that the court kind of really needs that expert on the ground to go and,
Yeah.
work out what's going on, speak to the children, present some recommendations with just a bit more of an understanding like with that family as to exactly what the issues are.
Yeah.
Most cases will just go through the court system without any need for CAFCASS involvement. And
Okay.
actually, the court are scrutinising CAFCASS involvement. That they are a public body.
Yeah.
There's big delays for using CAFCASS. They're funded by the government, so they will only use them if they really do think it is
Okay.
necessary. Yeah.
And so in practical terms, then that conversation with the children, how does it happen? Is it on the phone? Is it in person? Do they separate the different children if there's several in the family? How does that usually work?
Yeah, so they will always try and talk to the children in a neutral environment.
Hmm.
So that's something that lots of my clients are worried about,
Yeah.
especially if they're concerned about the parent maybe influencing the children or the children not feeling like they can speak openly to
Yeah.
CAFCASS. And the CAFCASS officers are fully aware that that's a concern that parents have, and they want the children to feel comfortable and they want to kind of
Yeah.
make sure that they are getting the authentic voices of those
Hmm.
children. So sometimes the conversation will happen at school,
Okay.
and that's all pre-arranged. So they don't just turn up in the children's class and say
Yeah.
come with me and sit outside in the corridor. It's pre-arranged with the school. There will be a separate room for the child to go into. They'll have an opportunity to speak to CAFCASS in an environment that feels neutral and feels comfortable for the child.
Yeah.
Um, in some cases, CAFCASS do have offices where the children can come into the offices. Um, and if there's no school and there's no offices, they will just try and find space away from the parents to do some work with the children. So it might be
Okay.
saying, "Come and show me your room, and I'll come and have a look at your bed and your posters on your wall. And while we're
Yeah.
here, let's just have a little chat about what's going on for you and your family."
And will they speak to the children individually then?
So it depends a little bit on the circumstances of the case. Depending on their kind of time and their availability with that family, there might be a couple of occasions when they meet with the children. So they might meet with the children together in the first instance, and
Yeah.
then they might say, "Oh, okay, let's go to your room and show me a little bit about this, and let's just have a bit of a chat away from your brother, and let's go to
Okay.
your room and do that."
Yeah.
But the extent to which they feel that that's necessary will really depend upon the circumstances of the case. If
Hmm.
the children are little and they're just having a general play, they'll
Yeah.
often, do that in a kind of family situation with them both together.
Okay. And so just to clarify, then CAFCAS doesn't have the power to do anything in that moment. So if they have concerns, it's all included in the report, but it's the court ultimately that's going to make the decisions. CAFCAS couldn't say, actually, this child in danger, they're not even going home tonight, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So, I mean, if they really thought the child was really in danger, then
Hmm.
obviously they've got a duty to safeguard that child. But I think in most private law children cases, it won't be that level of concern. It will be,
Yeah.
a consideration of all of the factors and then just recommendations to the court.
Yeah.
Um, and that will be set out, and both parents will get a chance to have a look at that report before the next court hearing.
Oh, that's good
And
to know. Okay.
exactly, and then it's the judge that makes that decision, taking into account kind of all of the welfare factors and the recommendations of CAFCAS. So
Okay.
they won't. change anything on the ground, and they don't have the power to actually change the arrangements between parents,
Yeah.
unless they really thought that they were very concerned that there was a safeguarding issue that came up within their investigations. But
Okay.
that's would be really unusual for that to happen once we're
Okay.
already in court proceedings. Yeah.
So you raise an interesting point. So that the parents get to see the report that shows what the children said. So they would have visibility of that.
Exactly, and obviously in the report it's not a verbatim of what the children
Hmm.
have said, and
Yeah.
just to be really clear about the work they do with children. Obviously, if they're working especially with younger children, a lot of what they do is maybe some drawings. They do a bit of play with them just to kind of understand like where's that the center of interest for that child.
Yeah.
Where are they mentioning mum? Are they mentioning dad? What are they sort of saying when they're talking about mum or dad, or how they feel about the situation, or
Hmm.
what works best for them when they come home from school, where they like to be, what they like to do at the weekend. So it's a really like relaxed kind of piece of work rather than
Yeah.
a conversation. So they won't necessarily report everything that the child has said verbatim in their report. Their report highlights in their report their sort of analysis of how the children has presented when they've been asked these questions by CAFCASS.
Yeah.
If parents are concerned about what might have been reported in the CAFCASS report, you can sometimes say to the CAFCASS officer, I do want to see more notes. I want to understand
Okay.
what actual conversations were had with this child. Can you show me what work you've done? Sometimes they will exhibit those to the reportee, so you'll see the drawings, you'll see the kind of the letters that sometimes the children prepare with CAFCASS, but it will be a summary of that conversation
Yeah.
rather than the direct kind of word for word conversation that they've had.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting contrast with child inclusive mediation, for example, where what the child says is confidential unless they agree for it to be shared with their parents. The children are, I'm assuming, made aware that what they say will be in some form relayed to the court and to their parents.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's more of an issue for the older children, isn't it?
Hmm.
And I think, understandably, children might be concerned about that. But the CAFCASS officer's job is to try and build that trust with the child to say, if there are things, worries that you want me to frame in a certain way, I obviously they've got the duty to kind of make recommendations to the judge, taking into
Hmm.
account everything, including the child's wishes and feelings and worries. And actually I think most children probably do want their voice to be heard.
I agree.
They might say
Yeah.
something, oh, I don't really want you saying this. And the CAFCASS officers then got to kind of work out how that can be communicated to the court and to the parents without kind of any worries that the child's confidence in them has been impacted. But
Yeah.
it is a different role from a mediator. They are there to make sure the child's wishes and feelings are put before the court. And parents
Yeah.
do need to know what that is
I
because
agree.
there might be reasons why that's really helpful for the parents to
Hmm.
hear. Or there might be reasons why actually the parent wants to challenge what's being said to CAFCASS,
Hmm.
and therefore they do need to understand what has been said for the CAFCASS
Yeah.
officer to make those recommendations.
Yeah.
Um,
So once the report is out, how much does the court rely on that? Or is it just one of the things they look at?
Yeah, so I mean, it is one of the things they look at, Chloe. They don't have to follow the CAFCASS officer's recommendations,
Okay.
um, but they do often follow the
Okay.
recommendations, and they might follow them completely, or they
Hmm.
might just follow them in part. So the
Okay.
CAFCASS officer might say, I really recommend this arrangement might work, and the judge might say, okay, I really understand why the CAFCASS officer said that. But I've looked at a few different things, and after hearing the evidence, I'm going to tweak that slightly.
Hmm.
Whether that's the holiday arrangements or whether it's a slightly different handover arrangement.
Yeah.
That they're recommendations, they're not, mandated decision that the judge has to follow. Um,
Okay.
it's a suggestion about what that CAFCASS officer thinks is best for the family, but they are really persuasive,
Yeah.
and they are often followed. Yeah.
Okay. And does the report end the involvement of CAFCAS, or would CAFCAS potentially be involved in the hearings as well?
Yeah, so they often are involved in the hearing. So the CAFCASS officer is often invited to come along to
Hmm.
sometimes the second court hearing, which is the
Okay.
hearing after their report has been filed to see if they can
Hmm.
help the parties reach an agreement.
Hmm.
And more commonly, they are ordered to come to a final hearing if the
Okay.
parents dispute the report and they don't agree, and one of them is challenging the recommendations. And in these circumstances, the parent will say, "Oh, I need that CAFCASS officer to come and be asked questions by my barrister,
Yeah.
and by the judge or the magistrates, so we can kind of understand where they might have maybe not taken into account something they should have taken into account, or maybe change their recommendations after hearing some more evidence or kind of understanding a little bit more why some of the assumptions they made in their report might not necessarily be accurate."
Okay.
So they can do, and in some really complex cases, Chloe, CAFCASS are involved past that first report. Sometimes they'll make some recommendations in the first report, and
Yeah.
then some directions will be made by the court. The contact might progress a little bit, and then CAFCASS might be asked to come back and do what we call an addendum report. So that's
Okay.
another follow-up report where they look at, has anything changed? What work have the parents done? Has contact moved on? Do I
Hmm.
want to change my recommendations? Should the court make a final order? Um, and so they can actually be involved. I've got a few cases where there's been two addendum reports.
Oh,
The
wow.
CAFCASS have, yeah, they've
Okay.
been involved for a while. Um, and in some situations, Chloe, the court can also make what's called a family assistance order,
Yeah.
which asks for CAFCASS to remain involved after the proceedings have ended to try and help parents to kind of adjust to the order that's been made by the court. It's often in high conflict cases where the
Yeah.
court thinks it's helpful to have someone just having some continued oversight over what's happening for this family after the order's been made.
And so then CAFCASS would have a regular call with the parents or something like that?
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Interesting.
And there's someone that if there are issues that arise, they say the children stop coming to contact, there's worries about breaching, they can call up a CAFCASS officer and report any concerns, and the CAFCASS officer can take maybe a more proactive approach and contact the
Hmm.
other parent and try and help understand what's happening, why the order isn't being complied with, whether they
Yeah.
can iron out any crinkles without the need for an application back to court again.
Oh, that's really helpful. So just to clarify, because I think there's something people don't always realize, you parents don't need to approve the engagement of CAFCASS. It's systematic. It's something that happens whether they want it or not. Is that correct?
Exactly. So that actually, funnily enough, with the family assistance order that we were just talking about, they do need to agree, and that's one of the
Okay.
conditions for the family assistance order. But for a Section 7 report, that's something the court is saying that they need. The court needs
Yeah.
it. Parents can have arguments about whether they think that CAFCASS involvement is necessary or not. But on the whole, the judge will have an idea about whether they want the assistance of CAFCASS
Okay.
to give those recommendations. Um,
So it's
and
not an optional process, basically.
it's not really, no.
And do they get to choose or have any say in terms of who the CAFCASS officer is?
No, Chloe, no, they don't.
It's a government
Um,
agency. It's a
that's
set
it.
process, and they have to comply, basically.
That's it. So it will the once a direction has been made for CAFCASS involvement, the court will make the referral, and
Yeah.
then a CAFCASS officer will be allocated to a family,
Okay.
and then they'll make contact with the parents and going forward. But no, you don't have any choice about who you appoint, and that's why some parents are now turning to independent social workers,
Yes, I was going to ask you
instead of
about that, and
CAFCASS.
how that how they articulate it with each other, whether one cancels the other, and if you could highlight some of the differences really between CAFCASS and an ISW.
Exactly, yeah. So they are often used to do the same job, which is the Section 7 report within proceedings.
Yeah.
So that they are the format for essentially what they're looking at will be the same because they'll be looking at the
Hmm.
welfare checklist. But there
Yeah.
are some really quite big differences between CAFCASS and independent social workers. And I think the increase in the kind of popularity of independent social workers has really come from the huge delays of using
Mm.
CAFCASS.
Yeah.
So, we used to be looking at around 12 weeks for a CAFCASS report to be turned around, which
Yeah.
is already quite a long time for parents if they're
Yeah.
sort of maybe not having contact with their child or there are some big issues that they really
Yeah.
want the court to resolve. Um, but 12 weeks now would be good for CAFCASS. And we're often saying there's going to be a 20-week wait for a
Wow.
CAFCASS report. So parents are kind of turning to like other options.
Yeah.
And one of these is using an independent social worker rather than CAFCASS.
Which is
Um,
effectively a private version of CAFCASS.
that's
Is that
it.
it, where you pay?
Exactly. And a lot of the independent social workers that we use have worked for CAFCASS in the past.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, they've been children's guardians, they've been like they've worked in the family justice
Yeah.
system in some form. And they're very experienced. You do get your choice of who you
Hmm.
want to use.
Yeah.
So parents can, if they've got a particular issue that they're concerned about, they can pick a social worker who might be very experienced in dealing with trauma,
Hmm.
or if the children have got, autism, they might be very experienced in communicating with children who are autistic. And they look at CVs between them and they can try
Yeah.
and agree someone. Now,
Okay.
if you're in court proceedings, the court still needs to sanction the approval of the
Okay.
appointment of an independent social worker. And they'll look at the same test. Is it necessary for the court to have that assistance?
And sorry, just to interrupt, but just in that case, would they not have CAFCASS involved at all? They would just replace
Correct.
them with the ISW.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. So one person, and I mean, thinking about it logically, you don't want your children being spoken to by a CAFCASS officer and then by an independent social worker,
Yeah, it's a
and,
lot.
you know,
Yeah.
maybe different ports saying slightly different things, which is not really helpful to anyone. So they are exactly what you said. They're a private version of CAFCASS, used normally often within proceedings.
Hmm.
They're much quicker, so you tend to be looking at like an 8 to 10 week turnaround
Yeah.
rather than 20
Yeah,
weeks.
it's half the time. Yeah.
Exactly. And they just have a bit more in terms of resources to be able to give to your case. So,
Yeah.
you're paying them, so they will spend not quite as long as you want, but like a much, much longer time investigating the issues,
Yeah.
speaking with the children, maybe speaking to the schools, speaking to other family members, doing a bit more, if they've just got a bit more time to kind of do a more in-depth
Yeah.
analysis of what's going on for that family.
Hmm.
Um, but you do have to pay for them, and
Yeah.
that's the
That's the downside.
difference.
But I
Yeah.
do find that, I mean, I often recommend in international relocation cases to have an ISW because, as you say, it's a private service, so you get that extra bit. And when you're trying to convince the court that the children are going to be better off in another country, having someone independent visit this school they would be going to, the home they'd be living in, etc., it can really make a big difference to the case. So it's true that you do get, a bit more of a thorough job than when it's CAFCAS.
Exactly, and we do often use them in relocation proceedings, Chloe. So, you won't get a CAFCASS officer offering to fly out to, Florida or wherever you're
Yeah,
saying that, but an independent social worker would do if you want them
yeah,
to. They can go out, they can look at the reality on the ground, they can talk with more people. So they are often very, very useful in
yeah,
relocation cases, and their reports are longer. So, a CAFCASS
yeah.
report might be 20 pages. You might easily have a 40, 50 page independent
Hmm.
social worker report.
Yeah.
So, that they're just able to give those extra resources to the
Hmm.
case.
Yeah, makes
And
sense.
the other thing with independent social workers is that they don't have to be involved only after proceedings are issued because the parents are employing them directly. So
Yeah.
we've actually started using independent social workers more outside of proceedings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, where the
That's
parents
interesting.
just
Yeah.
they
In
can't
mediation or
agree.
whatnot. Yeah.
Exactly. And they're working with the family, they're taking a bit more of a sort of problem solving approach rather than
Yeah.
necessarily doing a report for the court.
Yeah.
Um, and they're sort of doing that, it's mediation, but it's like on the ground mediation.
Yes.
And
Yes. And on
yeah,
an ongoing
um,
basis, which is quite interesting, actually.
exactly. And they can support parents for as long as the parents want to continue to pay for them. So when you have those really high conflict cases, having an independent social worker on board can really, really help
Hmm.
make sure that, there's no delay, you're getting to the bottom of the kind of issues that the parents are concerned about, and that the family's got that support to kind of make those
Yeah.
changes that they need to kind of move things forward.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So the last thing I want to talk about is something you hinted to earlier, is the Pathfinder pilot. Could you explain for those who don't know what the Pathfinder trial is? Explain what it is, what it in what changes it might lead to on a wider scale.
Yeah, so this is a really new thing for us, and it's only being brought in. You've talked about it being a pilot, and that's very much right at the moment. It's only in a few areas in England and Wales at the moment. I think it's Birmingham and Solihull, and Wales are two of the areas, and Dorset, I think, is the other area. And it's a new way of dealing with children cases. And the aim is to sort of front load the work to have a much more kind of problem solving, inquisitorial approach at a really early stage.
Yeah.
And I think the idea really is just to try and narrow down the issues. So
Hmm.
you're sort of resolving issues at an earlier stage with fewer court hearings,
Yeah.
and in a way that doesn't increase conflict between the parents in
Yeah.
the way that these contested, long drawn out children proceedings can do. So with the Pathfinder project, CAFCASS take a kind of really, really fundamental role from a very early stage. And
Okay.
unlike the proceedings I was just talking to you about, they are involved in every
Hmm.
case.
Yeah.
And they do what's called a child impact report right at the
Hmm.
start of the case, where
Yeah.
they'll speak to the children, they'll speak to the parents, they'll speak to the police, the social services, the school. Do something much more akin to what a Section 7 report looks like
Yeah.
at the very start before you've even had a court hearing.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. And so the
they're really
court would
getting to
review
the
that on paper before meeting with anyone. Is that it?
exactly that's what
Okay.
they do, and it really tries to narrow down the issues that the court then needs to deal with in those that first hearing. And they won't be able to resolve every case because there might be findings that need to be made by the court. There might be domestic abuse issues that need to be considered, and they would defer to the court in those circumstances to kind of
Yeah.
take it down a slightly different path. But in a lot of cases, I think they are finding that they are able to resolve things quicker.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
I think that's the intent, isn't it? To try and keep matters out of court and to resolve them faster.
exactly. And I think it has been really praised by those judges that have been in the system. They say it's working really well. So our team works nationally. So I've been involved in a few cases in Birmingham, a
Yeah.
case in Wales at the moment. And it does feel different
Hmm.
to the way that proceedings, we're all used to these children proceedings operating in a very different way.
Hmm.
And it does feel like it's a positive change for
Yeah.
lots and lots of people. The problem is CAFCASS resourcing, and that at the moment that's
Yeah.
why they're struggling to roll it out any further, because you just need lots more CAFCASS officers on the
Yeah.
ground to be
Yeah.
able to do these reports quickly. So there's not any delay. But
But is
yeah,
the
a
idea
positive change.
ultimately is to spread this across the country? I mean, they were doing a pilot to see how it worked, but the concept of the pilot is to then spread it out and refine, I guess, the model.
That's it. And I think because it's gone so well, they are really keen to do that.
Yeah.
Just the whether how long that's going to take will very much depend upon CAFCASS resourcing.
Yeah.
But it certainly will be changing for a lot more places in the next 5 to 10 years, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. So a lot of changes to look forward to, and they should hopefully help make everything a lot smoother than it is today. I guess one last question that's coming to mind is, if when you have people coming to you and who are about to have their meeting with Kafka, so parents, what are the top three tips you would give them in preparing for that Kafka's interview?
Yeah, so I always just say to clients, like, don't worry about it. The CAFCASS officer is not there to trip you up.
Yeah.
They're there to try and help find the best outcome for your child.
Hmm.
So don't worry, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
And I think some clients get worried that they won't be able to properly articulate their concerns or their feelings. So I normally say to my clients, like, make a list
Hmm.
of the things that you want to cover in your call with CAFCASS, your concerns.
Yeah.
And then if you need to, refer to it during your meeting and refer back and make sure that you have covered those things off that you want to cover.
Yeah.
In my experience, a CAFCASS officer will normally be the one that guides the conversation.
Hmm.
So they might well take you on a slightly different path than you want to go on.
Yeah.
And you've got to respect that because they're the ones, tasked with doing this report, and
Yeah.
are very effective at using their time, properly. And so if they don't want to talk to you about this, the relationship history, don't
Yeah.
dwell on it. Go, try and listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And if you've got any questions, make sure you've had an opportunity to raise your questions
Mhm.
with CAFCASS, because I think, as you said, parents do worry about the process. It feels very scary for them having someone come into their family, scrutinize their
Yeah.
parenting. So if you've got some questions about things that, maybe you could be doing better or that the CAFCASS officer thinks might help, rely on their expertise. Ask them for some
Yeah.
support. None of us are perfect parents, and I say that to
Yeah.
my clients all the time. I'm certainly not a perfect parent, but we can all be better. And CAFCASS officers do have those resources. They can refer people to parenting courses. They can help people
Mhm.
complete parenting plans. So those are my top tips. Don't worry. Think about what you want to say, but don't worry if the CAFCASS officer wants to take you off on a slightly different route.
Yeah.
And think about what you can get out of it, and how the
Yeah.
CAFCASS officer can help you too.
Now, those are great tips. And I like the point around accepting that, this is not about scrutinizing how good a parent you are. And, because that can be really intimidating. As you say, we all have our better days. And so it's sometimes quite scary for people to have someone kind of poking into what they feel is their business.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree, Chloe.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for all this information. So many useful tips and tricks. I'll put your email address in the episode notes so people can reach out to you if they have any concerns, particularly around children matters. But thank you so much for joining me today.
Lovely to meet you again, Chloe.